Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBinge It. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 3, Episode 20, Favorite Son. This episode aired March 19th, 1997. Before we get into this ridiculous episode, is there anything to say about last week's episode, which was Rise?
I really liked Rise. I'm going to say that's one of my favorite episodes because it's the start of something bigger, the more positive relationship between Tuvok and Neelix.
Yeah, I read again today when I was looking stuff up for this episode that this is the third of some trilogy of episodes that are thought to be the three worst of the season. But we both liked the previous episode, so I'm not sure what the problem was there. I mean, I agree with this one and with Darkling, the first one of the three. I don't quite get the second one as a problem.
I would very much disagree with Rise being on that list.
Yeah. Well, we can keep putting off talking about this episode, or we can just power through it.
I feel, Kim, you might be giving your opinion on this episode away early.
Oh my God. This episode sucks.
Well, fortunately, I have the notes.
Oh, if I'd had the notes, we'd be done in 22 seconds. So I guess you might as well get started so we can get it over with.
We open with Chakotay and Harry on the bridge, logging the position of a trinary star, which, little known fact, 10% of all star systems are trinary.
10?
Yeah, a little bit of unwanted education there.
If they can do the thing we were laughing about a couple of episodes ago where all of a sudden there's a ship right in their path, you'd think we'd run into a few more of these then. You know what I mean?
It wouldn't be that rare.
Yeah.
Harry comments that this system seems familiar, and Tuvok suggests, and I had to write this down because I liked it, he is experiencing a paradoxical state-dependent associative phenomena. And Janeway translates this for a very confused-looking Harry to déjà vu. A small ship approaches, and a blue reptilian-looking alien hails, introducing himself as Alban, captain of the Narada. He welcomes Voyager to Nasari space, but Harry says that ship is going to fire. Tuvok can detect no threat, but Harry takes control of Tactical, raises shields, and opens fire. A very angry Janeway glares at Harry and orders red alert, and into the opening credits.
Why can the ops station just take control of Tactical and start firing?
I imagine that doesn't actually seem that unrealistic. I would imagine that there is a protocol or a procedure in place that if Tactical was severely injured or knocked out, Ops could take over, and the same being true of Tactical or many of the other stations. So you would need a level of redundancy.
Okay.
Janeway looked really mad, though, when she turned around and looked at Harry.
Yeah, she's got a few moments here early on in this episode where she is not just mad, disappointed.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Back from the opening credits and straight into a space battle, Voyager's trading shots with this much smaller ship, and Chakotay relieves Harry from Ops, as Voyager seems to be taking a pounding. Shields are down to 70%, there's a pressure buildup in a plasma conduit, and warp engines are down. Things manage to go from bad to worse, as the conduit ruptures and propulsion is now down. It also appears to hit B'Elanna in the face. Finally, Janeway orders Tactical to target the ship's weapons array, and a direct hit takes them out, and they move away. Question here, what were they aiming at before Janeway gave that order?
Random weak spots on the ship, I don't know.
I think that targeting their weapon systems would be your primary target. Take out weapons and shields, and once those are down, you can easily just obliterate them.
Well, it's a slightly confusing situation because it seemed all friendly, and then Harry picked a fight, so maybe just in the chaos, she was just being overly specific about what she was asking for.
Okay, I'll accept that.
You can hand wave away my question. I can also hand wave away your question.
A very annoyed Janeway marches up to Harry and asks to know exactly what he thought he was doing. Harry repeats that they were about to fire on Voyager, and Tuvok counters saying, logs show the aliens' weapons were not powered. Harry continues to insist, saying he detected a Tetrion emission coming from the vessel. Tuvok is skeptical, but Harry continues saying it came from their weapons. The welcome to Nasari is a trick, but he can't explain how he knows any of this. Janeway doesn't doubt Harry's intentions to protect Voyager, but she orders Tuvok to review the logs and see if there's any basis for Harry's hunch. But then the kicker. While they investigate, she suspends Harry from duty. And I notice here a security officer seems to have appeared
suddenly
on the bridge and escorts Harry out. When did that happen?
I don't know. Maybe Tuvok called him.
Yeah, maybe that's just standard procedure.
Maybe if someone takes over the security officer's station and starts shooting, there's a special alert security button that goes off, or an alarm that goes off.
Yeah.
At the end of this scene here, when Janeway tells Harry to go to sickbay, she says something like, and have the doctor take a look at that cut. And she says those last two words with such disdain. It's very funny.
Yes, you've got people injured, almost killed, and you've got a cut.
Yep. She's like, how dare you?
In sickbay, B'Elanna is seriously injured, with her lungs being burned. That one's usually pretty fatal.
That would be bad.
But the doctor pulls her back from the brink and describes it as another patient snatched from the jaws of death.
Yeah.
Do you think that's in his original programming, or is he just starting to improvise and learn?
That seems like original Doctor.
Yeah. Harry blames himself for almost getting B'Elanna killed. Technically true. Telling Kes he started the fight, but at that moment he was absolutely sure, and now the feeling is fading. We also see that the security officer is waiting for Harry outside a sickbay, so I guess he's now permanently under escort or guard. Now in Harry's quarters, he's having a nightmare about the events of the day, and has a flashback to his mother when he was a child and sick, with what looks like red lesions on his face. So he had smallpox as a child?
Maybe just chickenpox.
Well, they describe it later as the Mendacan pox.
Yeah.
Waking from his nightmare, Harry looks in the mirror to see there are now red marks all over his face. And did you notice here how big Harry's quarters are? They're huge.
Yes, I had that same thought. He walked a long ways from his bed to the bathroom. Yeah.
We've had hotel rooms smaller than that.
I know, that's funny that you thought that. Yeah, it was quite noticeable.
And he's an ensign. How big are Tuvok's quarters? Not that there'd be much in them. They'd be very austere.
James, you make that joke so many times. Every single time you talk about Tuvok's quarters, you make that joke.
Back in sickbay, the doctor can't find the cause of Harry's marks, but he does relate the good news that it's not contagious. The doctor also notes Harry's blood chemistry has been altered. And thinking some more about that, based on what the doctor just said, I'm pretty sure the doctor would come out with a line like, well, you're going to die, but fortunately, it won't affect anyone else.
This is an example of one of the things that should be alarming in the episode, but we just shrug it off and keep going.
Yeah, you got some red spots and your blood chemistry's being changed. No biggie.
I'm sure we'll figure this out later.
Harry tells the doc he's concerned this disease is having a psychological effect. He's been suffering from a strange sense of déjà vu, and how on the bridge he had this sudden instinct and fired on the alien ship without orders. The doctor describes that behavior as atypical and will run a closer analysis. Also in sickbay, B'Elanna regains consciousness and appears to be fully recovered from burned lungs and broken ribs.
Well, her ribs still do hurt.
B'Elanna does describe the spots on Harry's face as kind of cute. It makes him look like a speckled targ. Okay, whatever meds the doctor has put her on, I think she's high as a kite at this point.
Yeah, maybe.
Now in Janeway's ready room, Harry takes full responsibility for what he calls a mistake. Janeway is now delivering a much softer tone, telling him the alien ship was charging weapons. Tuvok matched the Tetryon surges with the energy beam the ship fired at Voyager. Harry tells Janeway, as soon as he saw the ship, he felt this suspicion and loathing. He knew they were in trouble, but cannot explain it. He continues telling her how this area of space seems familiar to him, and it feels like he's been here before. Harry does go through a few possible explanations: space-time anomalies, alien telepathy, alternate realities. Let's face it, all of those things are perfectly normal Star Trek events and explanations for phenomena happening. I'll disagree with Harry when he says the list gets weirder as it goes on. All those things seem pretty normal.
I'll say at this point, this episode's not too bad. It's kind of like Threshold, where it's okay up to a point.
Yeah.
And then it all goes wrong, and we're about to go wrong.
They're interrupted when Tuvok calls to report 3 Nasari ships approaching. On the bridge, Chakotay reports they can't outrun them as they're limited to warp 3 at best. Harry asks Tom to pull up a star chart and directs them to a very specific system, telling Janeway, "We'll be safe there, I'm sure of it." And Janeway, when she's thinking, sort of gives to Harry this great, weird up and down look there. Tuvok strongly advises Janeway against confrontation, and for a change, she actually takes his advice.
She does.
And orders Tom to follow Harry's course. The Nasari vessels are now catching up as they arrive at the star system, and on the view screen we see a brown and grey planet. Seeing it, Harry says, "Taresia," and tells Janeway he saw it in his dreams. Tuvok reports another vessel is approaching from the third planet. It's not Nasari, but it's on an intercept course, and weapons are powered. We cut to another space battle shot. There's a lot of space battles in this episode, where a cool-looking grey ship just flies past Voyager, fires its weapons, and takes out all 3 of the Nasari ships. I feel Voyager should be really working on trading with these people for this technology. It seems a lot more effective than Voyager.
Yeah, Voyager itself, certainly in this season, has been outgunned by every single ship that we've matched up with, and it doesn't make any sense.
The new ship hails Voyager, and a woman on screen announces they are a Tasarian starship. Then catching sight of Harry, she says, "There you are." Harry asks if she knows him, and she says, "I know you are one of my people. You're Tasarian. Welcome home."
And Harry says, "Oh, I saw that episode of Deep Space Nine that you're in. I know you."
Which one was she in?
Sanctuary.
Oh, she was the flaky skin people.
Correct. Because, sometimes we watch the old episodes on the ship.
Great surprise look from Janeway here.
Mm-hmm. And from Harry.
And it's probably not the weirdest thing that's happened to him so far.
No, it really isn't.
Well, back from a dramatic ad break, and Janeway's recording a log. Did you want the star date of the log, Kim?
No, thank you.
Voyager has been escorted back to the Tasarian homeworld so they can investigate the claim that Harry is a member of their race. Beaming down to the surface, the woman from the ship announces, "Another Tasarian has returned home," as 4 young women greet Harry, one kissing him, and all of them seeming to paw him. Plus, everyone there seems to have the same facial marks as Harry.
Mm-hmm.
The woman goes on to explain the genetic fragments in Harry's DNA are his Tasarian genes, which have now become active. He was born on this world and as an embryo taken to Earth and placed in the womb of his mother. As he developed, he would have incorporated DNA from the parent and appeared physically to be a normal human child. It seems like sort of a weird cuckoo thing.
I was just thinking it was like, I don't want to take care of these kids. I'll just drop them off over here. Let somebody else deal with it.
I think that might also be the other reason.
Yeah.
Plus, this scene is so weird because the women are all like pawing at Harry.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are other episodes in Star Trek where we do this kind of nonsense, where we reduce the women characters to just hanging on men, right? And it made me start thinking about there have to be better episodes than this in Star Trek, right? Like, at first I was like, I was going to list all the bad episodes were like this, and then I changed my mind. I'm like, no, instead I'm going to start writing down, as I'm watching this episode, I'm just going to start writing down episodes that are better than this one. So just FYI, I'll start naming those pretty soon.
Okay. Tuvok asks if all the children are born to alien parents, and the woman confirms. When they return, they bring an infusion of new genetic material and years of experience of another culture. I will note, Janeway does look a little bit skeptical of this story.
You know what other episode they tried to convince us that a regular character is actually a completely different species?
What's that?
Second Skin. That was a better episode than this episode.
Yeah, Kira the Cardassian. One of my favorite DS9 episodes.
Small piece of trivia.
Yes?
The captain of the Nazari ship, or at least the person who called, was in that episode as a Cardassian, that actor.
Oh, funny.
Mm-hmm.
That episode is in a different universe from this one.
Yes.
The woman, who, I don't know if we ever actually hear her name. She was on the spaceship. She's like their leader. I'll just call her the leader. Well, the leader tells Janeway that Tasari have a genetic drive to find their way back home. As he got closer to home, his dormant genetic memory was reawakened.
Ponfar.
These are, they're kind of the founders of the Delta Quadrant. They programmed all the changelings to find their way home.
Mm-hmm.
Tom asks the one other guy there if this is the standard welcome home, and we learn it is for males, as they are pretty rare, only 1 in 10 on the planet being a male.
Okay, here's another time where something has happened that we should be concerned about. We should be taking this into consideration. Like, there may be something behind this story, right? Something that we're not quite expecting. Oh, why are there no men here? The only other man that you have is also one like Harry, who just magically appeared. Why would we not be suspicious?
Especially Tuvok.
Well, and Janeway, I mean, the smart people.
Yeah.
They play it for laughs, like they so frequently do when we degrade women on Star Trek. We play it for laughs because Tom is like, oh, interesting. It's like, oh my God. Please kick Gene Roddenberry out of the room.
Janeway thanks the Tasari leader for defending Voyager, and she explains they were probably attacked because the Nasari detected a Tasarian on board. The Nasari will do anything to stop their people returning. The Tasari leader invites them to stay for a while.
Do you know what episode is better than this?
What's that?
The previous episode, Rise, is better than this.
Definitely. Harry is mingling with the young women and asks if he has family there, how he'd like to meet his biological parents. And we learn that no one meets their fathers. They take the embryos to the other world and apparently are never seen again. Come on, this has got to be sending off some red flags right here.
Not suspicious at all.
Yeah. Janeway and the away team head back to Voyager, and she allows Harry to remain. And there's some yet more weird pawing at Harry.
Do you know what episode is better than this?
Oh, what's that?
Data's Day.
Data's Day is one of the great Trek episodes of all time.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what else is better than this? The entire first season of Discovery.
Okay, I don't think I can disagree with that.
Uh-huh.
Back on Voyager, the Doctor confirms to Janeway that Harry does have the Tasarian genetic fragments in his DNA. They were disguising themselves as recessive elements that normally exist in all DNA. They also discuss how, as Harry's genes activated, they implanted neural connections in Harry's brain, giving him very specific knowledge. The Doctor describes this as quite a feat of genetic engineering.
And we're not even a little suspicious?
Oh, right.
I mean, this is the thing you always say about the Doctor when he's delivering any kind of news. He's really chipper. This is a good example. He's super chipper about this.
Oh, completely.
But we should be going, keep digging.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Janeway weirdly seems to be convinced that what the Tasarians are saying is true. Harry is one of their people. And she's concerned what this will mean when Voyager is ready to leave. However, all 3 Nasari ships are still holding position outside the Tasarian system, and Janeway does want to avoid conflict and try to convince them that they're not their enemy. Tuvok points out that if they only consider Ensign Kim to be their enemy, then without Harry, they may be open to diplomacy. So Janeway orders them to break orbit and head out to talk. Harry's chatting with the Nasari guy from earlier, and he is the only other guy we see. 2 women join them, and one offers Harry a mild mood enhancer, which he declines.
It's like a stoner party.
Yes. And we learn that the Tasarian have multiple wives, and this guy is getting married tonight to 3 of his wives. And my note here says, oh dear, this is launched into a little problematic already.
There's something really strange in this scene because Harry gives like a little speech about him not really ever believing that he deserved what his parents did for him and how much they cared about him and tried to sort of put him on a pedestal. I 100% did not buy that speech.
Yeah.
The only reason they did it was so that the other guy could say, oh, well, see, they were right. It's because you were so different and unique because you were really this alien.
Yeah.
But that was so contrived.
Yeah. I didn't make a lot of notes on that scene because it was...
Because it was a drug scene.
It was like a lot of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem here. They throw this stuff in to make this work, but we notice that you shoehorned it in because that does not fit with Harry's character.
No, Harry is really good at what he does.
Yes, and he's devoted to his family, so that doesn't, that just didn't work.
Yeah.
Do you know what episode is better than this?
Oh, what's that?
The Offspring.
Oh, another Data episode. Yes, that is a good one. And what's the line from that one that you really like?
Oh, when Data is going through the different bodies that his offspring could have.
Yeah.
One of them is a Klingon, and Deanna says, oh, a friend for Worf. We laugh so hard. It's so ridiculous to think that it would be a friend of Worf's. I mean, maybe I'm reaching too high. I don't need to list the best episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah.
I could list almost any episode of Star Trek.
The bar is very low here, Kim.
The bar is So low. And it's still going.
In space, Voyager is now talking with the Nasari ships, who are not attacking them, and the Nasari captain agrees there's no reason for hostility between them. He says her crew member won't be returning to you. No one who comes home to Taresia ever leaves. And the way he puts emphasis on comes home, you can see the quotation marks around that.
Yeah. So,
again, that should be a pretty big red flag.
I mean, ask some more questions about that.
Right.
And even maybe ask why these hostilities are even happening, because they probably have more info. I don't know, maybe they weren't willing to talk about anything, but it's certainly suspicious what he says.
Yeah, he doesn't seem that hostile to Voyager, just the Tarsarians, so maybe you could share some info with him. Well, the negotiations with the alien ends when the captain tells Janeway if he lets a Tarsarian back on board, he will attack. She should just forget him and be on her way. And then he cuts transmission. Heading back to the Tarsarian homeworld, Tuvok reports a Polaron grid has now been activated around the planet, and it's too strong for Voyager to get through. Janeway orders a hail, but communications are also being blocked. And Chuckles makes the observation, I guess we're not welcome anymore. And into the ad break.
You know what episode is better than this?
Oh, what's that?
Time Amok from Prodigy.
Wow, yes.
You know what? Every episode of Prodigy.
Both seasons. And why didn't we get a third? We needed that third season. We deserve it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. The reason we didn't get it is probably this episode. It's like, this is why we can't have nice things.
On Taresia, Harry is now at the marriage ceremony. A woman in an orange beekeeper outfit blindfolds and ties the guy up.
Not suspicious at all.
And paints on his face a little bit and then announces, the joining is complete.
Those red circles are ominous that they've painted all over him. It's like, is this where you're going to stab me? What are these for?
Harry asks about why they bound him, and a woman explains it's about binding and how they won't be looking for anyone else. And then asks, do you find it exciting?
He's like,
oh my God,
I don't
Harry.
think so.
You're at a bondage party. I really hope you're into that thing. Otherwise, you should probably leave now.
This is where he should have said, I prefer a Klingon ceremony. Could we do that instead?
Oh, yeah.
When it's my turn?
Does that lead on to another better episode?
Yeah, that episode is also better.
Harry excuses himself from the bondage party and attempts to contact Voyager, but he can't get through. And the Tasari leader says, oh, they've probably not returned yet, and tells him not to worry.
It's like trying to call Mom to get out of this party, this horrible party you don't want to be at. Mom, can you come pick me up?
Yeah.
I really don't want to be here anymore. It was fun for a while. It's getting kind of weird.
They're getting weird. On Voyager, they're not having any luck getting through the tachyon grid, and in sickbay, the doctor has some new information. He's been looking into Harry's birth and checked previous microcellular scans, and he found no traces of Tarsarian genetic fragments. The conclusion is, he wasn't born with them. The embryo implantation was a lie, and they're on the clock, as the alien DNA is continuing to alter Harry's genetic structure. The doctor says, in a few days, he'll be indistinguishable from a native Tarsarian.
You know what episode's better than this?
What's that?
Future's End, Part 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah. Is that ever a good episode? Continuing his explanation, the doctor expects Harry was exposed to a retrovirus, and reviewing microcellular scans from the transporter log, he found where Harry was infected.
Why didn't you look at this stuff before you declared it all? Oh, he's obviously an alien.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
Well, okay, I'm going to go into overanalysis.
Mm-hmm.
Why, when you go on an away mission and then come back, isn't there any kind of protocol for taking before DNA, after DNA scan, and then comparing the two?
Make sure nothing changed.
You know, we have computer scripts today. We had them in DOS, where you could take two files and actually compare them.
Diff.
And so in the future, do they forget anything like kind of checking? Is there no scripts that run that go, yeah, one of your people came back from the planet and has all these like modified DNA sequences in their genome. This might be a problem.
I don't know. But he gave some weird answer about the biofilters could have filtered out the virus, but it was too late because it was in the DNA. It's like, what are you talking about?
Shouldn't you be checking the DNA of the people who come back?
Shouldn't you be checking? Yeah, I mean...
Again, this falls entirely into your thing of, to make this episode work, you have to just veer straight off into stupid.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on the planet, Harry has new quarters, and the Caesarean woman rubs some kind of oil on his forehead. I assume she's drugging him.
Why not?
And we go into another Harry dream sequence. He sees the Caesarean women welcoming him home, and Janeway telling him he really has been special all of his life. And he sees his mother telling him he knows where his real home is. And then a Caesarean woman tells him to stay with her. And the dream seems to get a little bit steamy. When he awakes, there are 2 Caesarean women in his room telling him they just want to help him relax. Harry tells them he just wants to be alone, saying he's not joining with them or anybody. They tell him that's the reason he's drawn back home, to have children, to follow his instincts. But he insists he's going back to Voyager, and they tell him he has a responsibility to pass on his genes, saying his place is here. Harry pretends to go along with this, and ties up one of the Caesari, quipping, "You said before this could be exciting." This is a very heavily bondage-implied episode.
It's very strange.
The other Caesari woman figures out it's a trick, and Harry just clubs her. But he does apologize, though, saying, "Sorry about that," and then he escapes.
I admit I did laugh. Like, oh, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry I tased you.
Sneaking through a hallway, Harry finds Taemon's quarters, and inside he finds a desiccated corpse, still tied up and wearing the blindfold.
Why would they just leave him there? Oh my god.
And my note here says, "Death by snoo snoo," and obviously they didn't tell him the safe word.
No. And you can still see the red things they painted on his face, as if they somehow just went through the skin and etched onto his bones.
We learn this guy was called Taemon, and one of Taemon's wives return. Harry holds her at knife point, asking what happened. Well, I say knife. It looked like some kind of...
some piece of equipment.
Yeah. It was pointy.
Something they maybe used to extract the life out of the poor dead guy, because it was sitting like on the bedside table.
Right. Well, she tells him, we must denucleate a large number of cells to collect enough genetic material for conception.
That must be what that is. The thing that he's playing around with. It's the denucleator. Be careful with that thing.
I'm surprised he didn't drop it and go, ooh.
Ew. Did you clean this? Oh. But also, why did she come back? I don't understand what's happening. The guy's dead.
Harry's figured it out. This is why there aren't any men here. They don't leave with embryos in status. They're killed. That's
the funniest line of the whole episode. Oh, this is why there aren't any men here. You kill them all. I mean, okay.
I love the next line where she says, any father should be willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of his children. It's like there was a line from a comedian years ago where he says something about his kids want to save him from monsters. And he says, I'm a young guy. I can have more kids.
The trouble, of course, with that line, I mean, yes, you can connect it to that and it is funny, but the evil women are trying to trap the men into having babies. And it's just, it's like the same thing here. It's just so stupid. It's just because there were so many examples early on of just women hating in the writing. It was so dumb.
Harry asks if any of it is true, and she tells him males are very rare.
Especially if you're killing all of them.
They need males of other species who can be transformed into compatible mates, and then murdered.
Oh, you know what episode is better than this?
What's that?
Cathexis. That's the one where Chakotay is brain dead, but he's floating around the ship, and an alien takes over Tuvok.
How brain dead?
Yes. Just a little brain dead.
On Voyager, Janeway and Chakotay have a plan. They can take down the shield before the patrol ship gets to them, but it doesn't give them a lot of time to get a lock on Harry. And we get a great space shot of Voyager using its shields to break through the grid, and they're in the clear. On the surface, Harry is confronted by a stick-wielding Taresians, and the leader tells him this could have been a joyous occasion. Although, not really for Harry.
Yeah, not for Harry.
Harry struggles to escape, but they close in on him. And Voyager to the rescue, they beam him out. As Voyager comes under attack from the Taresian ship, the 3 Nasari vessels move in for an interception. Cut to a short space battle, as the incoming Nasari fire a couple of shots at Voyager, but concentrate the rest of their fire on the Tessarian ship. Now in the mess, Harry is telling the story of Odysseus and the sirens to Neelix, and he tells him there was something more than just the beautiful women. It was exciting to have a new identity, of being more than young Ensign Kim. Neelix tells him he's glad to have Ensign Kim back, although he should have kept some of the spots. Those were very distinguished. I don't think he should have. B'Elanna would have picked on him all the time about being a speckled targ.
I mean, just get into cosplay, Harry.
That's advice to live by, Kim.
Yeah.
Harry tells Tom sometimes he'd like to be more bold, kind of like Tom, which Tom finds pretty funny, saying, you might want to reconsider that. There may be prison time involved. And continues, saying, since he's been on Voyager, he's tried to be more like Harry. And we close with the two of them laughing and leaving the mess hall. The end.
You know what episode is better than this?
Oh, what's that?
Prototype.
Oh, yes.
Even though there was that goofy thing with B'Elanna being the mother of the robot, it was still better than this.
That was a good episode. I think what was great about that episode is the point in it when B'Elanna kind of realizes what she's done. That wonderful, oh, crap moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I read that there were many incarnations of this script. Anytime there's a bad episode, it does seem like on Memory Alpha, there's the writers trying to convince themselves that earlier drafts were better.
Yeah.
Right? And then it became something bad. But I think the earliest draft was for Harry to actually be this alien. And even though they would still leave with him, he would now have changed into an alien.
Interesting.
Which, that would have been interesting. They could have kept that.
Yeah.
That would have given Harry something different to do.
I will say about the spots, though, they're not nearly as good as Trill spots.
No, they weren't good enough to be Trill. And I suppose that's why, because they didn't want it to be exactly like Trill.
Yeah.
And maybe make it a little easier to apply, because there were so many characters in this episode. But
I'm glad they didn't screw up Harry. This episode's bad enough on its own. Just, destroying Harry would just push it over the edge.
Well, I don't think that would destroy him.
Not that it really needed much to push it over the edge. It's actually in the bottom of the canyon on fire.
No, it's in the bottom. Yeah, it's bad. I guess it would have been bad if we'd had a constant reminder of this terrible episode from here. Yeah. Well, anyway, do you have some overanalysis?
Yes. I think the first thing is, so the Doctor was looking at the DNA, right, and said there was these recessive elements that were non-human. The Federation is deeply, strictly opposed to genetic manipulation because of what happened with Khan.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think they'd be carrying out checks looking for those kind of things.
Yeah.
Like looking at all your DNA and not just going, oh, these are some obsolete, redundant piece of DNA that don't actually do anything.
That's a good point.
I would see the Federation, basically kind of policing this, because you'd always be running the risk of somebody sneaking in a little bit of trying to put in a few superpowers.
Yeah, that's a good point, which is why I think in that first scene where the Doctor is saying, oh, well, I guess he is the alien.
Right.
It would have made so much more sense if he had said, that doesn't really make sense that we never would have caught it before. I'm going to do some more analysis, right? Something like that. So at least we've left it open.
Yep.
But instead, it was just like, oh, I guess he's the alien. And then we go down to the planet and they're all like, I guess he's the alien. And it makes it so dumb that they do that because of exactly what you said. They wouldn't be taking it so lightly.
Yeah. It's a huge deal.
Right.
Even just from a security perspective, is the Federation or Starfleet now full of aliens who could swap loyalties at the drop of a hat?
Yeah, this would be a very big deal if it had really happened, yeah.
Next thing, maybe the natural state on this planet is that the males are kind of like bees in a beehive. They reproduce once and then die, or like praying mantises.
Mm-hmm.
So their natural order is the males die pretty quickly. There doesn't need to be a lot of males.
Yeah.
Next thing, this race are genetic engineering geniuses who can build a retrovirus that will literally modify your DNA, implant memories, change you from one species to a compatible species with them. It doesn't matter how different you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then to reproduce, have to bring males in from outside. If they're genetic engineering geniuses, why do you even need to bring anyone in?
Yeah,
you can generate your own future generations. It's so stupid.
Yeah, and you should even be able to manipulate your own DNA so that males would start getting born.
Right.
No, it doesn't make any sense. There's some kind of message here that, oh, well, when women are in charge, they just consume the men and destroy everything, and this is why you can't have any women in power. It's just like, come on.
Well, you know what my note here says? I believe one of the writers, maybe the head writer, was going through their 4th divorce and were very bitter and was writing a story about all his ex-wives and how they all bled him dry.
Yeah, and how terrible they are. When it's such a joke, because women just want equality and they want things to be fair. They don't want to destroy all of men. It's embarrassing.
Right.
I'm embarrassed by this episode.
What I think is so terrible at this episode is you could use this concept to produce a really good episode. Here's some of the things you could do. Number 1, don't make them look humanoid. Make them look reptilian. And actually have Harry start changing into a reptilian.
And have Tom be attracted to them.
That would actually be pretty funny. Tell it, I think, as a story where instead of like a male fantasy where all these women are flocking to you.
Leave the fantastical part out of it and you could have made a good story.
And turn it into a solid sci-fi story where this race, as part of the way this race evolves and progresses, is it literally takes DNA from other species and incorporates it into their genome. Kind of like a biological version of the Borg. And they don't have, if you like, maybe it's cultural or it's part of their makeup. They're forced to reproduce by basically taking DNA and making another generation with, future generation with DNA from other species. So it keeps on evolving over, see this evolving over time. And I think you could have made a really solid science fiction story there. And they keep it secret. That would be the other part.
And what a perfect point in the timeline to tell a story like that.
Yeah.
Because we've seen little hints of the Borg, but we haven't hit them yet. That would be perfect. That would have been like an evolution towards the Borg.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Just in terms of storytelling, I mean.
Yeah. This is it's almost a biological version of the Borg.
Yeah. When they do stuff like this and they turn it into this male fantasy, we flash back to what Star Trek was kind of like in the 60s.
Yeah.
And it's just so, I mean, I get it. This is still a long time ago, but it was the 90s. I mean, I think we could have done better.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
we've talked about this before in various episodes, but we've leaned into the wrong thing.
Yeah.
We forgot we're a sci-fi show.
Right.
And we've done this other stupid thing.
And this episode suffers from, did everybody lose their brains again? Well, you said it, you kind of have to force the writing into a particular direction to make things happen. When you look at the characters and go, they haven't shown any characteristics of that before.
Oh, right. Yeah. Like, especially when Harry was saying, oh, I didn't deserve my parents. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You just made that up. That we haven't seen any sign of that before, and now you've made that up. I really feel like the problem I'm having with this episode is because it's been done so much better within Star Trek before.
Yeah.
The episode Second Skin is an incredible episode.
Yes.
And towards the end of that episode, Kira and the viewer is going, is she a Cardassian?
Yes.
That's how good it is.
Yep.
And then at the end, no, she's not. But here, you never think this is happening because they don't take themselves seriously. They're doing all the wrong things, distracting us with all these stupid... And by the way, some of those women are the worst actors. And Harry is not great anyway. And he's probably not great because the material in this episode is so bad.
Yeah.
And then you put these ridiculous line readings in, and it's all just a big farce. And it's just embarrassing because just go watch Second Skin. If you want to see an episode where they actually make this work,
right?
Go watch something else. Just don't even watch this.
Well, you've made suggestions throughout of better episodes to watch.
Watch any of those episodes instead of this. Those. Yeah. But Second Skin is just it's a similar... well, it's not a similar story. It uses the same hook, but that's it. Everything else about it is better.
It is not a similar story.
No.
I feel there was the bones here for what could have been a great science fiction Star Trek story. And what they turned it into was this a weird male wish fulfillment fantasy with a little bit of somebody's bondage kink thrown in?
Well, I was reading the Memory Alpha page of the TNG episode Angel 1, where it's a matriarchal society. It's the one where Riker's got that ridiculous outfit on where his entire chest is exposed. Remember that episode? Yes. But I mean, regardless of how that stupid episode, there's a thing in there that talks about Gene Roddenberry in the writing room and how he would say these things about what a matriarchal society could and would be like and how women would rule. But it would consistently devolve into something sleazy, right? Something where the women were lesser and they had evil intentions. But he would make these proclamations that would make you believe that he believes in equality, but then he would just turn it right back into something ridiculous and salacious. And I kept thinking about that in this episode. I'm like, did the same, I mean, Roddenberry wasn't alive anymore by this episode, but did the same thing happen where we started with a sci-fi premise and we somehow devolved into nonsense?
Right.
I don't know. I wasn't there, but
what?
Come on.
I think the biggest thing about this episode is, I think this is where the Amazonian episode of Futurama comes from. Watching this, I kept on thinking of Death by Snoo Snoo.
Well, look, I don't remember Futurama at all, but I didn't even watch all of it. But I would imagine the answer is yes, that this is the exact kind of episode when somebody wants to make fun of Star Trek. This is it.
Yeah. Oh,
this is what they're going to pick on. We've talked about episodes like this before where I'm like, this is the thing where people say Star Trek is so dumb, right? It's this sort of episode. And here's another example.
Right.
Hopefully it's just because we had to produce so many episodes in a season, so we would just throw these dumb ones in there thinking it's fine. This isn't going to come back to haunt us. But here we are, 30 years later talking about it.
Come back to haunt you, yeah.
But it's part of your canon, and here it is. But yeah, it probably is based on this and other stupid things like this that Star Trek did.
And that, I think, wraps up my overanalysis.
I think I've said a lot of mine already, although I was trying to figure out what was going on with the other aliens, the Nazari. Did they know that this was happening? Did a bunch of their men disappear onto that planet?
I assume, yes.
Yeah.
I assume because they're closest, they end up basically losing a lot of their people. So maybe they are just very opposed to them. They could have told Janeway what was going on.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's why I ask.
Again, another stupid plot point just for the purpose of to make the story work. The Nazari don't go, oh yeah, we wiped them out. They steal men and murder them, right?
Yeah, they could have easily said that. Although I also thought, well, if we're writing a high school level or worse story, the other thing could be that the women on that planet rejected all these guys because they were too ugly.
Too alien, but too blue.
Yeah, they didn't want that. They didn't want that blueness to get in the way of their complexion. Yeah, that would have been just as dumb as anything else in this episode.
Oh dear.
The scene where Harry ties up the one woman and knocks out the other. I wrote down in my notes that this is always what happens. They always push too hard. It happened in that episode Coda with the guy who was pretending to be Janeway's dad.
Oh,
everything was going along fine, and then he pushed too hard. And then she went, something going on here. And the same thing happened in that scene. It's everything was going okay. Harry's making out with all of them. It seems like, they're working their way to getting him to stay. But then they go, oh, he still doesn't want to leave. And they push too hard, and then he knocks them out. So I thought that was funny. A typical turning point.
It's a common theme.
I've given all my women in the future points. Yeah. Every single one of them I have already said. And I mean, this is a terrible look for women in the future. It's ridiculous. So I don't need to repeat all of them. And in Janeway's leadership corner, again, I think we accepted it too quickly, and I think that's a mistake of leadership.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we would do that. I thought it was a really good instinct that they went to talk to the Nazari, but they got no information out of them.
Yeah.
So it in the end was sort of pointless.
Right.
But we did not ask enough questions.
No. Again, characters acting out of form. I mean, look, you brought up Coda. Janeway questioned everything in Coda. In this one, you're just like, oh yeah, Harry's an alien. Oh yeah, we're good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, all right.
Makes sense.
What?
So then, should we do rating? Then thumbs up, thumbs down?
I think
or
we should do
neutral.
rating.
What is your rating?
Okay, alas, I only have 2 thumbs to give down. God, what an absolute embarrassment of an episode.
Yeah.
You take what could be a fantastic science fiction story and you turn it into this garbage? I mean, I feel bad for Garrett Wang having to deliver those lines. It was painful.
Yeah. There were many times I thought, doesn't anybody go, oh my God, this is dumb?
To quote Scrooge, wow, does that suck?
That does apply here. I mean, yeah, I also give 2 thumbs down. Just a disaster.
This one needs to be sealed in a box and forgotten about.
Oh, this is another one of those where I did not want to go back and watch it a second time. It was really hard to do that. And I may have fast forwarded a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's a bust.
Yeah, well, I had to write the notes for a bad episode this time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Oh, I did Threshold.
Yeah.
If I had to watch one of 2 episodes, I was forced to watch them, and the choice was Threshold or this episode, I would watch Threshold.
Threshold is at least funny.
It's at least funny. Mm-hmm.
Threshold is like one of those movies where it's bad, but it's funny unintentionally. And you can watch it and just go, oh, God, that's just so silly.
Yeah. Well, I vote we move on.
I vote yes. We're moving on.
That wraps up Season 3, Episode 20. Come back next week for Episode 21, which, good God, let's hope it's better.
We live in hope.
In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com. We're also on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads, and YouTube at ReBingeIt, or you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.